Hello, I'm State Representative Jim Buchy from the 84th House District. Welcome to Ohio in Focus.
Hello and welcome to this edition of Ohio in Focus, a program that brings state government to you. I'm your host, Brad Miller, and I'm joined today by State Representative Jim Buchy, who serves the 84th House District, which includes all of Mercer County and parts of Audelaize, Darke, and Shelby counties. Representative, as always, good to have you on the show.
Thank you. It's a real privilege to be back.
Let's get started. Occasionally, legislators will introduce bills that aim to raise awareness about an important topic or an issue to the state or to their constituents. You've done that this month by introducing a bill to raise awareness on Krabbe disease. I believe I pronounced that right. Can you tell us what that disease is?
Well, the disease is a disease that destroys the nerve cells around the brain, and then that translates on into the nervous system. And the disease affects mostly infants. It's a rare disease, but it's a debilitating and a killing disease.
And I understand this issue was brought to your attention by one of your constituents. Can you give us a little bit of the background on that?
That is correct. The parents of a child who passed away from this very bad disease before the age of 2 came to me, and also to Senator Faber, who is our state senator, and to make us aware of the seriousness of this disease and the fact that nobody knows about it and there's thus far no cure for it. So we decided to take action to do just exactly what House Bill 62 does, is to raise awareness of the disease to the public and the citizens of Ohio, to make the second week of September Krabbe Disease Month. Or Krabbe Disease Week, I'm sorry, not month.
And as you mentioned, it's House Bill 62 in case people want to search that and learn more about it. So sometimes people have a somewhat cynical reaction sometimes to bills that intend to raise awareness about things. They'll say things like, why don't you just work to solve the problem instead of just raising awareness? What is your response to that, and why do you think it's important to raise understanding, knowledge, and awareness of issues like this as part of solving the problem ultimately?
Well, of course, I would say most of the people watching the show today have never heard of Krabbe disease. And so what we're trying to do in House Bill 62 is to educate people and then get the word out as to how serious this disease is. While it is not a huge disease in terms of numbers of children who are affected by it, it is a deadly disease, and the more we know about it, the more that we can then direct resources to find out how we can cure the disease. And as a matter of fact, our president, Senator Faber, who is our state senator, has introduced legislation along that line to allow for screenings of newborns, because finding detection then leads to prevention. So that's the whole idea behind it. Educate, and then let's go to work and find a cure.
And we'll certainly be following that throughout the process. You've recently had legislation that you've introduced and sponsored that passed through the House dealing with state testing in schools. That was House Bill 7. Can you tell us some of the background of House Bill 7 and some of the issues that it addressed?
Sure. Well, of course, last year in the Education Mid-Budget Review legislation, we gave what's known as safe harbor, or we allowed the schools, in the public schools in Ohio, not to have their report cards downgraded because of the new park testing that began February 17th. In other words, this is a test that the children all have to take now, and the education community suggested that we give the schools the ability not to have lower scores be held against them this year, because they're all anticipating lower scores that are going to happen on the park test. At the same time, they gave the teachers safe harbor from not having lower scores be held against them in their teacher evaluations. The only problem is they didn't give the children safe harbor. So House Bill 7 does exactly that, puts them on the same level playing field with the teachers and the administrators, so that if the scores do not come out good, that will not be held against them in this year. And there are a lot of children who are opting out, who are opted out of taking the tests, and that will not be held against them either. Now, while it won't be held against them this school year, at some point, if they didn't take the test, they get a 0, and before they graduate, at some point they'll have to have an assessment test to be certified to get graduated.
You've certainly touched on this in your previous answer. The bill passed through both the House Education Committee and on the House floor unanimously. Mm-hmm. What would you say made this bill so strong and so strong of an issue to garner unanimous support from both sides of the aisle?
Well, nobody likes the park test. And we had testimony from superintendent, from parent, from student, from teachers, unions representing teachers. I mean, what more you need to know? Everybody's opposed to it. We did a survey of over 4,000 administrators in Ohio, and the survey, interesting, showed that 69% don't want the park test, and 83% support House Bill 7. So we obviously are in a situation where what we need to do is just pause. Let's step back. Let's take the test. I encouraged all children to take the test. You always take the test, and let the chips fall where they may. And then let's find out. Let's all look back, take a break, look at it, and see what we can do to make that test better.
Moving along to an issue, one of the most discussed issues on this program, certainly in talking to you over the past couple of years, is water quality. Mm-hmm. Largely because it has such a significant impact on your rural and agricultural district. The House and Senate are both working on bills currently to address water quality issues. And the House Agriculture and Rural Development Committee has met a couple of times away from Columbus, mm-hmm. Kind of taking it to the people in Northwest Ohio to get their input on this. What are some of your takeaways, since you serve on that committee? What are some of your takeaways of those committee hearings?
Well, sure. I not only am on the committee, but I'm also one of the prime sponsors of House Bill 61, along with Representative Hall, which is basically taking some language we had in 490 last year to make things better in terms of runoff. The issue is algae, and what can we do to reduce the phosphorus content that goes into the streams and rivers and lakes and so on. And takeaways, we had a hearing in Van Wert, we had a hearing in Sylvania. We listened to the agriculture community tell us some things that needed to be done to help them. Then we listened to the folks in around Toledo and the north coast of Ohio as it borders Lake Erie to see what we can do to reduce the amount of sediment and waste from the wastewater treatment facilities of the cities and so on. So we're trying to put together a frontal assault to reduce phosphorus and nutrients going into the lakes and so on, so that we don't have algae. And quite frankly, this is a personal responsibility issue, Brad. Everybody has a stake in this, and not only the agricultural community, but residents, anybody that has a septic tank, anybody that's hooked into a city wastewater treatment system. I mean, I just put it simply this way: if you flush a toilet, you're part of the problem. And so we're working together to find out how we can reduce nutrients getting into our water. And we're walking a tightrope here, because we know the importance to the state of the tourism and economy of northern Ohio and Lake Erie. And at the same time, we know the importance of having a wholesome, abundant supply of food. So, and my district, the 84th district, is the only district currently that has a distressed watershed, and that's because of Grand Lake St. Mary's. And I will point out that when there was a big algae bloom there several years ago that caused a big problem, I mean, in essence, closed that lake down for a year because people shied away from it because of the problem with the algae. So what has happened is everybody has pulled together, and we've, through various things, alum treatments, treatment trains cleaning water when it comes in the south side of the lake, more wetlands, homeowners putting aerators in closed-in channels, dredging. We're doing a lot of dredging. I mean, a little here, 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 here. Everybody's working together, and lo and behold, the lake's getting better. I mean, last summer was the best economic boon on Grand Lake St. Mary's since that algal bloom of several years ago. So we're going to do the same thing here with the Lake Erie situation, which was obviously prompted by the 400,000 citizens that were without drinking water last July. So the legislation and what people are telling us, and hopefully what we're going to come up with, will be helpful to cleaning up the lake.
So it's really about finding a balance between all of these interests. Taking a step back, talking about it more generally, we discussed how the committees were held outside of the state capitol. How is this helpful? And the House has done this in previous General Assemblies as well, with study committees and things like that. How is it helpful for you as a legislator, for the committee or the House as a whole, and to the people around these committee hearings, wherever they're held? How is it helpful, and why is that important?
Well, it's helpful because the people that come to the hearings are the ones that are involved in for example, in Van Wert, the people testified are all involved in agriculture. And they work with livestock and poultry and crops, and they work with the water. And so they know what can be helpful to us as legislators, what we can do to help through the legislative and regulatory process to help them be better stewards. And same way with the cities. We heard from the cities on how they're handling things, and we learned, for example, that there's an awful lot of sediment and human sludge from Toledo, for example, that has been deposited in Lake Erie. So we're trying to figure out how do we reduce if you reduce the amount of nutrients that's going in the water, pretty soon there's going to be less algae. That's the whole point. I'm not the sharpest card in the deck, but I know if you got less nutrients going in, you're not going to have an opportunity for as much algae.
Right. I think you're pretty smart.
No, I don't know about that.
We won't get into that, though.
No.
But
Moving right along.
We'll close by talking about the state budget, which is still working its way through the House Finance Committee. And while you don't serve on that particular committee, you still obviously remain very active in that process. What are some of the things that you've seen from the governor's proposal, and as well as some of the things that you expect from your House colleagues and perhaps yourself as this budget process moves along?
Well, sure. Of course, big thing I want to keep seeing is a reduction of taxes. The more money we have in our pockets, the faster the economy grows. And we've seen that in the last few years. Governor Kasich's leadership has produced a much stronger economy. We're bucking the national trend, and we want to see that continue. At the same time, we want to be able to have a priority in terms of services so that we meet the needs of the people and grow the economy. So, and that involves the two biggest issues are healthcare and education. And so we want to make sure that when the budgetary process is over at the end of June, that we've done a good job at keeping a good balance so that we maintain the growth structure that we're on currently.
You mentioned education. One of the always the top areas of focus and concern for legislators and for all Ohioans is school funding. Mm-hmm. It's still obviously pretty early in the process, so things can change. We don't know a final product yet, but what are some of your takeaways regarding the schools in your district?
Well, initially the schools, some of the larger schools are slated to do okay from a funding standpoint, while some of the smaller schools aren't, and so we're looking at that. One of the things that I am very strongly supporting an initiative from our state senator and president of the Senate, Keith Faber, and he and I are working on plans to give the high-performing schools some relief from a lot of the mandates and things that they have to put up with, which would help them manage their schools with a level funding from the state and so on. In other words, the 20 schools in the 84th House District are some of the highest performing schools in the state, and they should be rewarded for the good job they're doing. And the best way to reward them is relieve them from some of the things that they have to do that are not adding to productivity in the classroom. They get it right, they're doing a good job, give them a bonus.
We'd also like to take this opportunity to remind viewers in the 84th District that they can follow the budget process online at ohiochannel.org. Committee hearings are streamed live there and are also archived for to be very accommodating to your viewing pleasure. This is the second budget cycle that's had online committees streamed, in the just Finance Committee. And it was a major priority for previous Speaker Bill Batchelder. You were also a strong proponent of doing this. Why is this important and how is it helpful?
Well, I'm an idealist. I believe that the more people know about their state government, that ultimately it's going to get better. The less they know, it's got a chance to get worse. So I believe in transparency. I would be in support of all committee hearings being available to be on television for the viewers or whatever. You know me, I'm IT challenged, but you know, the little TV sets or whatever. But the more access that the people have to their government, then it's going to get better.
We have just a little bit of time left. You know the drill. At the end of the show, you share with your constituents how they can reach you here at the State House. Well,
I urge constituents first, if you have something you need to talk, call 614-466-6344. You can email me at rep84@ohiohouse.gov. And to respond to the survey of this show, it's tinyurl.com/Buchy March 2015. I urge you to respond to the surveys. It helps me.
And that contact information is also on the screen. Representative, always appreciate your insights.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us. And we look forward to seeing you again on the next edition of Ohio in Focus, the program that brings state government to you. Thanks for watching.